is Alfonso Todd with the GSS, the Grown, Sexy, and Sober, and 5 minutes of flavor with Lehigh Valley flavor. Today we're honored with Mr. Mayor Ed Pawlowski. We appreciate you coming in today.
Pleasure.
Hey, and today he's going to talk to us about some of the issues that are dealing with the city of Allentown. First of all, we want to know some things about you yourself.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about the history of Ed Pawlowski.
Well, I actually grew up, I'm not a native of the area, I actually came from Chicago. Grew up in the city. My parents owned a restaurant, and we lived on top of the restaurant.
Okay.
And my entire life was spent in the city and living on top of that restaurant. They worked constantly, like small business owners do.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, I had a great childhood. I had a great family who really cared for our kids. I have a daughter. I have a sister who is 21 years older than I am.
Oh, okay. Okay.
My parents had me late. They said I was a blessing. I kind of think it probably was a mistake.
Oh,
somewhere
gosh.
along
Okay.
the line. I don't know, in your 40s if you plan to have kids. But
Right.
I then went to start out my education, my background. Started out in ministry,
Oh, okay.
and was in ministry. I went to Moody Bible Institute. From there, I went to I was in a college ministry for a number of years, and then I went to work with a group of churches on the south side of Chicago. I was a community organizer. From there, I went to work with Lutheran Social Services and got into housing. They had picked up a contract with the Chicago Housing Authority to manage and to oversee scattered site housing that they were putting out within the neighborhoods, and so I was an organizer for them, and eventually went statewide with Lutheran Social Services, which was the largest social service agency in Illinois. Went back, got my master's in urban planning and public policy from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and then picked up a job as director of Windows of Opportunity, which was a nonprofit arm of Chicago Housing Authority, and we did programs throughout the entire footprint of the Housing Authority, which was huge in Chicago, as you could well imagine.
Wow.
There was over 150,000 housing units in the Housing Authority. Just to put it in perspective, I mean, the whole city of Allentown has 40,000 housing units. So,
so
the Housing Authority in Chicago was almost three times the size of the city of Allentown. And that was an exciting experience. Got to interact with a number of folks. In fact, interestingly enough, the person who was on my board at that particular point in time was Valerie Jarrett, who is now the senior advisor for Barack Obama.
Exactly. I was going to ask, did you all ever cross paths?
We did. She was the director of planning at the Housing Authority at that particular point in time. So, I got to meet a lot of interesting people, and then I finished my master's degree, looked for a job, and was looking at a nationwide search, and eventually ended up here. Came here, headed up a nonprofit housing agency, took it from one person. When I left, it was about 30, and we did a lot. I mean, we developed housing not only here in Allentown, but throughout Lehigh County, moved into a 6-county area, was then asked to go on and become Director of Economic Development, Community Economic Development for the city. Did that for several years, left because at that point I had some severe disagreements with the mayor. And had no intention. It was going to go back into economic development and housing. That was my background. And was asked by a number of folks to run for mayor. Had never run for political office before. Put my hat in the ring and won through the primary, and I won through the general pretty substantially.
Here I am today. Yeah, here you are. Okay.
Me and my family live in Center City. We've lived there for the last 12 years. I have a house on 11th and Linden. I have 2 little kids. My wife Lisa and I have been married for the last 20 years. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary.
Wow, congratulations with that.
I have a daughter who's 10. I have a son who's 6. They both go to McKinley. And we enjoy it. We love the city. I think it's a tremendous city with a tremendous history and tremendous potential.
Wow. Okay. So that's amazing.
So I was an organizer in the South Side of Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Everybody says I'm like, I wish I did. We were 2 different parts of the South Side. It was a pretty big city, as you can well imagine. But,
Well,
probably around the same time too.
Well, yeah,
we're not that
Well,
far
as I'm saying,
apart in
I'm
age.
thinking that you all had to somehow
Yeah, I
cross
forget
paths.
how old Barack is, but I think
Hmm.
he's what, 44, 45,
Yeah, I think yeah,
and I'm
he's early
43,
40s.
so we're not that far
Yeah,
apart.
I mean, maybe you all probably crossed paths,
Probably,
and
yeah,
didn't even realize it.
probably.
Yeah. Now, tell me this. I noticed that, as you said, in the political ring, being the mayor, you know, you've seen a lot of the changes going on in Allentown
Right.
since you've been here. Tell me what, I mean, right now, the biggest thing that everyone's speaking about is the shortfall.
Well,
Um,
let me back up and talk about what we've been able to accomplish.
yeah,
Okay,
please.
when
Yeah.
I came
Uh-huh.
into office, I was faced with a huge fiscal problem. We
Okay.
had a number of things that were in the midst of overall free fall and collapse. I was faced with a budget deficit that was projected $8 million.
Hmm.
We had no money in reserves. We had no money in our risk management fund. We were self-insured as municipalities. So
Okay.
that meant that
Hmm.
anybody who, say, slipped and fell in front of City Hall, everything was paid out of this fund, except there was no money in the
Wow.
fund.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
There wasn't even enough money to pay for health insurance for the employees.
Wow.
Before I
Okay.
was even sworn in, I was asking City Council to actually put money into the risk management fund because they had not paid Blue Cross for about 3 consecutive quarters, and they're about to cut all the city's health care
Wow.
costs,
Okay.
city's health care coverage out. And so
Mhm.
we had some real desperate circumstances. Turn off my phone
Mhm.
here. On top of that, we had a bond rating that had diminished
Mhm.
to nothing. It was basically junk bond status. Our fiscal outlook was downgraded from positive to negative by Standard & Poor's and Moody's.
Mm.
And we really didn't, we had a police pension scenario that was threatening to bankrupt the city.
Mm.
And so we had a lot of difficult challenges to overcome. In fact, because of that police pension scenario, about a third of our entire police force left the first several months through an early retirement scheme.
So
I
we
had
had almost
guys.
no police then.
Well, we had almost no police. In
Mhm.
fact, we were down to the lowest number that we had since 1950s in the city.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, our population has grown and changed since the
Well,
1950s,
it continues to grow.
and
Yeah.
continues to grow.
Mhm.
And so we had some very desperate circumstances and some pretty interesting challenges to overcome. But over the course of the last 3.5 years, we've really, I think, not only have tackled that climb of that very steep mountain, but I think we've come farther and faster than anybody thought possible.
Okay.
Because 3 years ago, when we were facing this $8 million deficit, we now have a $14 million cash reserve.
Okay.
And that's been through cutting budgets year after year. First year, we eliminated about $2.2 million out of the budget. We took this budget, had this deficit. We then addressed the fact that we had no reserves and no money in a risk management fund by taking out a loan against some of the city properties, which was like a home equity loan called a
Okay.
lease buyback loan.
Uh-huh.
That gave us money for reserves and basically helped to put money in. I'll use an Al Gore term, a lockbox.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But that helped us build up our reserves. But then we cut year after year after year. We cut another $2 million out of that budget. We beat that by $5 million in 2006.
Mhm.
2007, we came in about $3.5 million under budget as well. And we also looked for new revenue. We went after a number of new revenue sources. The first time, well, let me back up.
Mhm.
The city also, not only did it have fiscal challenges and it had public safety challenges,
Mhm.
but we had the worst charter on the face of the planet. Now, that's the document that guides, how the city operates.
So you had to rewrite the whole charter,
Well,
or?
we had this home rule charter that we were faced with that basically says you can't raise any new revenue outside of property tax. Everything else has to go to voter referendum,
Wow.
which no other municipality has, okay, except the city of Allentown.
Now, if you break that down, does that mean you have to vote on?
We have to vote on, unless we're raising your taxes,
Mhm.
your property taxes.
Mhm.
Basically, everything else has to go to vote.
Wow.
Which is
Okay.
very difficult for a city to operate in that fashion. Now, there was a fee that the state allowed municipalities to put on people who work within the municipalities. Everybody else around us had it.
Mhm.
Bethlehem, Easton, all the surrounding townships, except the city of Allentown, because we had to put it to voter referendum.
Wow.
So when we
Mhm.
put it to voter referendum back in 2005, that was actually the year I ran for office.
Mhm.
No one explained it. The prior mayor didn't explain it. It had failed miserably, 3-1.
Mhm.
No one knew what it was.
Mhm.
Came into office, formed a bipartisan committee, really went out and explained to people why this was important. And it was important because we have 60,000 people that work in the city on a daily basis.
Mhm.
thousand folks.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that, over about 60 to 62% do not